Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, we are going to continue on with The Making of a King or Charles III, depending on which version you read. Same book, doesn't matter. Guys, so this is my third part of the series. The first part went over chapter 1 and 2. Second part was just focused on chapter 3. It needed its own video. Now, on this part, I'm going to be totally honest with you. We got to the boring part. We don't do boring here. So here's the deal. I am going to hit the highlights on chapter 4, 5, and 6 because honestly, to me, that's the first time I've hit a dry spot in this book. So I'm going to hit the highlights for you, but then in this episode, we're going to dive into chapter 7, Headwinds. Let me just tell you, woo, it's the Harry and Meghan that we all need. No, let me rephrase that. We don't need them. The Harry and Meghan takedown that we need. Again, Hardman does a great job of rebutting things that they've claimed, pointing out their awful behavior. I'm excited to get into this with you. I'm just going to hit the highlights of 4, 5, and 6. It talks about Charles and his first days in the new position as king. And again, I made the disclaimer in the other videos. I'll say it here. No disrespect. When I say that about when I call him Charles, you know who I mean. I mean King Charles. Obviously, I respect him. Same with Catherine, Princess of Wales. She's my favorite. But when I get into these books, I sometimes get a little less formal and I just talk. So I'm like, oh, Charles did this. Again, no disrespect. It's King Charles. Here's my formal announcement. His name is King Charles. We know this. Chapter 4, 5, and 6 is about Charles's first days on the throne, what that was like for him. It really, it is interesting, but not to explain, if that makes any sense. So if you're reading the book, don't skip it. Read it, because it goes into, even details like they had set up a video to prepare Charles for the first few days on what to do, what to say, how to handle things. And it sounds like he had really good people around him. Now, notably, remember in Spare, unfortunately reread that one, Harry kept on about the bee, the wasp, and the fly. And he really talked down about these men in gray suits. They were code names for Queen Elizabeth's private secretary. Okay, so the bee was allegedly Queen Elizabeth's private secretary, Sir Edward Young. They think that Clive Alderton, who was Charles's private secretary, is the wasp. And William's private secretary, Simon Case, is the fly. But you should know, and Harry was such a prick to them. What else is new? That's what we've come to know from Harry. But you should know that Charles speaks so highly of them and how much they really helped him. In particular, it was Queen Elizabeth's private secretary, Sir Edward Young, as well as his private secretary, Clive Alderton, who were so helpful in his transition in these days. So it's interesting to me from that point of view, knowing how Harry talks so shitty about these people, and Charles couldn't be more complimentary about how helpful and integral they were in helping him know what to do and how to navigate these waters. So chapter 4 was a little bit tedious. I thought it was called D-Day. As explained, it was about that transition for Charles and assuming the role in the first few days, what that was like. Okay, here's the highlight for me of this chapter, page 76 on my copy. Again, it's going to be around that page depending on which book you read. I don't have to keep explaining in case you didn't watch the other ones. That's just a thing, but it doesn't matter. Page 76, I'm just going to talk about this one passage. So it talks about Charles's assuming the role. And he relied so heavily on Queen Camilla, her help in the situation, as well as William, Prince of Wales, well, newly Prince of Wales at that point, but Prince of Wales, who was staying at Birk Hall. Birk Hall is the name of Charles's residence in Scotland, which is right near Balmoral. It's explained that the king needed to have many discreet discussions with William. In the past, in the years gone by, it would have automatically included Harry. But of course not anymore. That was clearly not the occasion for an opening up of hearts with Prince Harry. And then this is my favorite line, particularly if he's still taking notes for his forthcoming book. So obviously we know Prince Harry cannot be trusted. And it's interesting to see it from this point of view of what Charles was dealing with, and knowing that even in this one could argue, one of his most important times of his life, assuming the role of king, he needed to keep Harry away because he needed to have William there, and William was the dependable one, and he was able to have these conversations with William, Prince of Wales. Love him too, full respect. But with William during this time. And it's just, I like hearing this. I like knowing that William is there for his father and he can always depend on William, and William's going to be, king one day. That's the highlight of that chapter for me. We already know it, but seeing that William is so dependable and how King Charles and William, Prince of Wales, they have this closer relationship. They're fully trusting each other. And he admits the king needed William by his side at this point and he could count on him. So William was staying with him at the house to have these conversations and to make the plans for the future. They could not trust that old Harry wouldn't be wearing a wire, so he was not invited. I fully love that. And I wish I was a fly on the wall when Harry got word about that. Unfortunately, Hardman didn't tell us. He may not have had any knowledge of how Harry reacted to that, but I kind of love it. Chapter 5, I'm breezing past. It's finished. Not super juicy there, just more of the details of Charles taking over the throne and what it was like for him, and again, how William helped. There's one quick Harry and Meghan mention, but it wasn't even juicy, so I'm moving right on. Chapter 6 is called Transition. It's an interesting deep dive into how different residences and properties changed hands during this time, how different situations were handled. Again, it's an interesting read, but as it's not juicy, I'm going to keep going. All right, let's get to the juicy parts. I've been waiting. You've been waiting. Let's go. Chapter 7, Headwinds. Here we go. Out of the gate, shots fired. Let me explain. The author kind of goes into Charles's honeymoon period, if you will, like how it was, he had just transitioned to being the king, and how the media was kind of letting him do his thing and all this, but about a month in, storm started a brewing. And it started with The Crown. I've seen a couple episodes of The Crown. I really haven't watched much. I know some people like it, some people do not. It doesn't matter to me. The point that the author tries to make with this is the royal family, I guess, famously have said they will not watch it. They disagree with a lot of the ways that they're being portrayed. He goes into how it actually hurt Prince Philip pretty bad, learning some of the things that he was being blamed for. Anyway, okay. All that said, the author on the first page of this chapter goes into how Harry had been a particular irritation around this time, because he made this announcement. I remember him saying this. The Crown was loosely based on the truth. He did this right after they struck their deal with Netflix. I just want to take a second and underline this point. So see what Harry did there. His family has been vocal about they don't watch it or they're upset by it. So what does Harry do? He's signed a deal with Netflix, so he's going to promote the show for them. It's nothing new, of course. They value paychecks over family and friends and anything of substance, so it's not shocking. I just wanted to bring our attention to this point. The first inkling of their Netflix project, Harry and Meghan's, would be revealed soon enough. So that 6-part, please give me that time back, fly on the wall confessional, Harry and Meghan. They said that would be a prelude, a mere hors d'oeuvre ahead of something bigger still. So October 27th, 1 week after the trailer for The Crown, Prince Harry's publishers announced that his long-awaited memoir was finally close to completion. It would be published around the world in early January, promising, quote, a raw and unflinching honesty. I'm sorry. When are they ever known for honesty? I would call Spare so many things, but honest is not one of them. Oh my goodness. Let's see here. Oh, did you know that in Poland, the book was titled The Other One? I think that's hilarious. I may have known that at the time, but I think I forgot that. But I cracked up when Robert Hardman reminded us that in Poland, the book was called The Other One. Is that why we call him The Other One? That one? But then Robert Hardman goes on to say, it's not hard to detect an overreaching underdog theme. I find that so funny and so well said, because especially knowing what's going on in real time with those two, how are they going to play victim next? The underdogs, my ass. Every opportunity in the world, and they're calling themselves the underdogs. The part that I didn't realize is that when this announcement was made about Harry's upcoming book, it was done actually on the same day that the Royal Mint had struck the first coins featuring the face of King Charles. The 50p coin would be in circulation in December, but it was a big deal, right? That's when the announcement was made. Nothing new for those two. Of course, they're going to pick a day when the royal family has something going on. Remember, I don't even like saying his name, but Omid tried to deny that was a thing. They never do that. They always do that. I've done videos on how that's their thing to do. But continuing on, I'm on page 142. Asked about the king's feeling on all this imminent incoming fire from those two, one palace staffer talked headwinds, that's where the chapter name comes from, face far from across the Atlantic. That's the only way of describing an extraordinary 12-week run of non-stop, disobliging headlines and combative allegations, all from them entirely beyond the control of the king and his staff. Storm force gales might have been a better metaphor. I mean, I think about that a lot too, and it was discussed at the time that these two and their timing, they were throwing shots as Prince Philip was unfortunately passing away and after he passed away. And then, of course, we know Queen Elizabeth was very ill and still queen and doing everything, and they're still firing shots. And now this, King Charles taking over. Remember, I love my dad and brother very much. That circulate. I hear that on repeat in my head as I think about this situation. So the king is, ascending the throne, and here's Harry doing this. Harry and Meghan both doing this stuff. Future Jen here. I'm editing and I'm pulling pictures to go with what I'm talking about Harry's attitude toward his father at any important event. Case in point, see the picture on the screen. This is coronation. This is his dad and brother's big day. And look at what a petulant child he's being. He's acting like an ass, and thank God for Princess Anne, Princess Royal's red feather, which I love so much. But no, it's just, it's another example of what the author's talking about, how Harry can't stand it that his family does better than him, and instead of working to improve himself or the things he's doing, he wants the easy road, he wants the fame, he wants none of the work involved, and he acts like an ass. All right, so we're still in Headwinds chapter 7. Let's keep going with the juicy stuff, page 149, if you're following along with me, roughly page 149. All right, December 2022, the inaugural trailer appeared for those two's Netflix documentary. Says about their new life in California, I'd say whining victim fest. The first of several teasers, it opened with Harry warning gravely that, quote, I had to do everything I could to protect my family. It was promised, quote, the full truth, end quote. Ha, we know how that turned out. The royal family and their staff were therefore steeling themselves for reprise of that Oprah interview from March 2021. So also presented as, quote, the truth. Again, I draw your attention to how many lies we've uncovered since that came out. So the author goes on to compare it to the, that one, the interview with Diana and Martin Bashir in 1995. He called that an astonishing unburdening of family secrets, and what a big deal that was. So in addition to Meghan's allegations of royal, quote, conversations, the one we're talking about, she said she had received no palace support, who could forget that, when she was feeling, the word I can't say here on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about, taking oneself out. Later in the same film, Harry claimed that he had been cut off financially. Again, we've discussed why that doesn't make any sense and talked about, I don't believe that to be the case, and was no longer speaking to his father. Although those two principal target was the media, and although there was, the author says several inconsistencies, I would say more than several, the couple had claimed, for example, that the Archbishop, who could forget this, of Canterbury had married them 3 days before their wedding. Although we saw through that, if you had any question at all, I'd draw your attention to the face that Harry made when she said that. I mean, what are you... Okay, I've been through it. What is she thinking? Anyway, but of course the Archbishop spoke up and says, no, not the case. The film had been excruciating for the family. It also prompted the late Queen to issue one of her most quoted lines of her long life. Recollections may vary. I love that so much. I think of Her Majesty the late Queen. I also think of Catherine, Princess of Wales, as it was revealed that allegedly she fought to keep that statement in. So again, both ladies love them. However, that Oprah Winfrey exchange had lasted 85 minutes. This new iterations of the Sussexes, I don't say their titles, of those two's, quote, truth, they do not know that word, would last the best part of 6 hours. I will never forget that. I worked and worked on recapping it, and I was telling Jay would come down and check on me and say, "How are you?" I kept saying, "I want my life back. I don't want to do this." Anyway, but I am glad we covered it and uncovered so many lies throughout. All right, with little indication of what might be in store for this time, except that it was unlikely to be good news. The royal family had simply had to press on with their engagements. Okay, so they do go into, and this is something I liked about the book, the author does a good job of explaining things like patronages that are very important to King Charles and how many are so important to King Charles. One thing I didn't realize, I honestly, again, I admit, I just don't know as much about Charles as I do about some of the other ones. So one of them that the author discusses in particular is called BITC. It's called Business in the Community. It's a favorite charity of the king's. He had been a founding patron of it, and it's been running for over 40 years. Can you believe that? That's amazing. It had started because of a meeting in 1982 with Black community leaders campaigning for better job opportunities in many parts of inner city Britain. So I know you guys know this, but, think about that when the Sugars are saying the things that they're saying, and Harry and Meghan are saying the things that they're saying. Again, I know this is crazy. I mean, I can't stand either of them, but this is what burns me up about Harry. Meghan knows nothing and says these claims, and Harold just goes along with it and doesn't even try to, put forth the facts like this. Okay. For more, Hardman goes into how over the years, King Charles had helped cajole leaders of some of Britain's best-known companies into adopting more socially responsible and inclusive recruitment policies. At least 1,000 companies representing more than 6 million employees had now signed BITC's, don't finish that, I know, I was going to add BITC's Race at Work Charter. Indeed, it had become a rite of passage for a new CEO of any large British company to be invited to join at that point, Prince of Wales, on one of his seeing is believing bus tours of struggling corner of a British city. Few declined. I think that's amazing. I think that's really cool to know. And I think it's great that the author, again, is highlighting things like this, something we would never hear from, the dastardly duo. Then, of course, he became king. He's had to wind down some of his active involvements in organizations like this. So he had this central hall gathering, they called it, where it was a celebration, but also I'm going to do my best, but I have to kind of step back because I'm king now type situation. But the author goes into the sadness that was hanging over this because, again, Harry and Meghan were clouding things. These good things that he was doing, they were trying to cloud. I'm sorry, I'm just taking a time out and processing this, and I'm thinking, if they felt strongly, why didn't they join in and this organization and help? Why am I hearing about this? I mean, again, I'm American, so I don't know about this. You guys in the UK are probably very aware of this, but BITC thing. But how come Harry and Meghan weren't involved in this, right? If this is a cause that's so near and dear to them, and they're not afraid to go on any ridiculous talk show that'll have them and discuss things like this, and yet there's this. And the other thing that comes to mind, I did a video on this, was that I don't want to go too dark, but the funeral that they attended that involved a terrible situation involving race. You can, again, check out my video on it. And they acted like assholes. So again, you'd think it was extra sensitive to them. If you'd think it was something that was extra sensitive to them, and they acted like a-holes. They allegedly arrived late. They made a scene. People were giving them looks. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. She was totally inappropriately dressed, but what else is new? All right, I digress. So those two, Harry and Meghan, were in New York the same day to receive that Ripple of Hope Award. You know the one, the Kennedy Award. I have to read this. Get ready. In recognition of their work of racial justice, mental health, and other social impact initiatives. So I tell you again, so the king is actually out doing things, it sounds like, to help the situation. These two are buying or picking up or whatever, making up awards, slapping their names on awards. and patting themselves on back. And I ask you, what have they actually done to help anybody? Again, in real time, I don't know, when this is going up and when you'll be watching it, but we're dealing with the park situation. At the time of this recording, they have not addressed it. And who knows? Again, it might be a couple days that this comes out. They may have, but they have so far to address it. So, yeah, I can definitely see where their priorities lie. More in the seat number that they're in and more of the award that they're getting than the actual helping with a solution to things like this. Ugh, absolutely disgusting. Let's continue. The founder's president, Kerry Kennedy, saluted them for being, quote, incredibly brave in speaking out on such issues. After receiving the award, which was praised for their, quote, lifelong commitment. I'm sorry, I read it like that because I'm disgusted. And so these words are like acid in my mouth. I hate it. I think this is so horrible. I'm talking about them with the nerve to take on an award like this, to pat themselves on the back. For what? What are we talking about? They have done nothing but made things divisive and, again, tried to steal focus for themselves. They're incredibly brave. Okay, let's continue. Let's see here. They were praised for a lifelong commitment to building strong, equitable communities through Archwell, to which they issued a joint statement, "Together we know that a ripple of hope can turn into a wave of change." Have you ever heard more bullshit in your life? Because I haven't. What have they done? What is this ripple of hope and what is this wave of change? Because we see none of it. You're just saying these words and nothing is being done. Nothing is changing. Meanwhile, back in Britain, staff who had watched the king bring about his own, quote, a wave of change. Again, I love this author. I love how he writes, using their own words back against them. Over many decades, through his Prince's Trust, business in the community, and multiple other organizations could either laugh or cry. Even those two most fervent admirers would acknowledge that in its 2-year infancy, Archwell had yet to demonstrate a lifelong commitment. And, at that point, it had only been 2 years. Now it's been, 4 years? How's that lifelong commitment going? It seems to be getting worse. Not that they've ever done anything, but it seems to be even less of nothing. Let's see. That, though, was of no great concern at the palace. What alarmed the king's team was what was coming next, just 2 days later, the first 3 episodes of Harry and Meghan. That 6-part documentary, which the couple had been busy making when not building equitable communities, right? In return, so it was reported they would receive a substantial but disclosed sum. The next 3 episodes would air a week later. You guys, I'm going to end this here. We still have so much more to go, and it's so juicy, and I'm so into this. I'm loving this. I think the author is doing a great job of using Harry and Meghan's own words against them and showing how they say these things, they don't follow through. I mean, it's continued on. We can see it with our own eyes in real time every day. Thank you guys for everything. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to keep going with this book. I'll bring you more juicy stuff. I'm here for this, and I truly hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have the best day. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.